Thank you for joining us and welcome to another episode of the Auto Guide Show brought to you by eBay Motors. This week we drive Acura's first ever electric vehicle. We take a drive in a redesigned Subaru. We prove 5 doors is better than 4, and there's an interesting new Lexus patent. Before we get to all that, a quick word from our sponsor. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, welcome back. It's time to get started, and our biggest story of the week is the new Acura ZDX, which neither Kyle or I drove, so we thought we'd bring on the person who reviewed it, one of our top contributors, Lee Bailey.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Lee.
Appreciate
so where
it.
were you to drive this? Where'd you go?
So this was in Montecito, which is right near Santa Barbara, so Southern California. The drive was kind of up the coast and then to Los Olivos, and then back. So coast, hill country, some highway, and then back, kind of a round loop. And yeah, I mean, I wish I had a little bit more time with it, to be honest. I mean, we were talking before we started recording about how some of these events are so compressed, you don't get a lot of seat time to really gather impressions. The nice thing about this, though, is that there's no A-spec. It was Type S only. So there's no switching cars. There was an uneven number of people there. So I actually had the vehicle to myself the whole time.
Oh, nice.
Which is great. And I drove a second one on a shorter loop to gather some photos. But this one here is US spec all the way. The black and white Orchid scheme, not available in Canada. We get red and black, but the US also gets what they call Orchid, which is a really nice, the photos kind of show it there. A nice lighter scheme with the red, I think, really pops. It's really impressive, though. I gotta say. I mean, it's the car that it's based on. I don't know if you guys have driven either this or the Lyriq, but this car is not just a reskin. It's a much different car than the Lyriq, in my opinion.
Yeah, I read your review. Kyle drove the Lyriq for like 10 feet about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Frigid North. But yes, as the one who posted up your story, I read it all. And yeah, it seems like you just look at it and you can see, although it's so closely based to Lyriq, Acura's done a good job of restyling it. And Kyle and I talked to Acura about this a couple months ago. And they were mentioning how they really wanted to have their brand image on the vehicle. And they tried to design the styling from the ground up. I also noticed you said inside is sort of a mix of, you see sort of some Acura stuff and then you kind of see some GM stuff, which is kind of hard to get away from. It's like the Supra, right? There's BMW stuff in there you can't avoid.
This was a topic of conversation at the event with the Acura PR folks and reps and the journalists, including myself. But apparently with the software, it is the code base, I believe that's the correct term, that the Cadillac also uses. But they've layered over their own software, so the fonts, the icons, the other aspects of the operating system is very accurate. And so once you see it, and you guys, I'm sure, are both going to drive it, you'll see that it does have that family kind of look. No 33-inch screen there. I made sure I mentioned that right at the top. That's Cadillac only. But the two screens that are there are really sharp and they're nice and big. On the instrument cluster side, you can do a lot of, it's configurable. But in terms of the styling, this was all done at the California Design Studio in LA that American Honda has, and that Acura obviously uses as well. The thing that's interesting also, two things about the car in terms of performance. It is much torquier than the Lyriq, like a lot torquier in the Type S form. Like it's over, I think it's 544 pounds-feet. And I'm working on another story about the Lyriq for one of my other outlets, and it's, I believe, 450. So there's a big difference in terms of the torque output. And this car is about 300 pounds lighter than the Lyriq, the Type S, compared to a similar all-wheel drive version of of the Lyric. So there are some. The car is built in the same plant, the old Saturn plant in Tennessee. It builds both cars. But the character, I would say, is much more, and the styling really drives that home too. I mentioned that in my story that it does have a very much of the chicane DRLs, the Acura face, which has been changed for EV. There's an they've now illuminate the Pentagon grill. The Diamond Pentagon grill is now illuminated. So they've done some EV things with it, but it's still very much an Acura face type car.
Yeah, the glowing grills is like all the rage right now. So
very much.
So before we go, Lee, just one thing that I loved in the story. Tell us all what Acura has used a lot of creativity and imagination to rename Super Cruise.
Yeah. So they were asking us to try all the modes, try sport, and I mentioned this in my story. They were hounding us. Sport mode, sport mode, sport mode. Okay. So I spent most of the drive in sport mode, which proved to be where the car is in its happy zone. But the cruise so it has Super Cruise, but it's called hands-free cruise. And I thought to myself, whoever's in charge of naming things, I mean, that's very literal. Like it's no, Super Cruise. I mean, Ford has a special name for theirs. And with Acura, it's like, no, it is what it says. You take your hands off when you're on the divided highways, like the interstates and some of the highways, the 400 series highways we have here in Ontario. And it does the automatic lane changes, which I also experienced and mentioned in the story. But yeah, the name is not the most creative I've ever encountered.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thanks for coming on, Lee. And you will be doing more reviews and features for us in the future. So we'll definitely have you back.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Lee.
See you later.
No problem.
All right. So moving on. Well, next is another car we didn't drive. This is driven by our freelancer Chase, and it is the redesigned 2025 Subaru Forester. And again, I read it thoroughly, and I was there when the car was debuted. Although from a great distance, it's still okay. That's the Forester. It's boxy. It is very different up front. It's probably the biggest restyle Subaru's done in at least 3 generations, potentially ever with this vehicle. They've ditched the C-shaped headlights and taillights. They really rounded out the nose. They have like really narrow headlights now. Inside, it's still very Subaru, updated, but it is. And obviously the hardware is still the same. But his whole review is basically sort of what Subaru does is they're selling these and they have such a devout fan base for them. They're not going to radically differ too much. So they just improved what was perceived as needed improving and left the rest alone. And although it might not be the favorite of everyone, the CVT, the boxer engine, the interior, customers clearly like it. So
yeah, that's the impression I get is like I mean, the title says it all, right? Is like if it ain't broke, like it doesn't need to dramatically change. That's the thing where sometimes we get really caught up in this idea that every generation of car needs to be massively different, and not the Forester. Like, I mean, I haven't been in the new one yet. I haven't even sat in it, but like that greenhouse is one of the major selling points for the Forester. Why would you ever want to change that? Having great visibility in a family vehicle is a win.
Yeah, and you always hear the jaded car people or even some reviewers are like, oh, CVT sucks, noisy engine, head gasket this. It's like their residual values are insane, which gives great deals on leases to customers, and they're still breaking sales records. So they're clearly doing something that people who are actually giving them money care about, which is what a business cares about. And the only thing that, I mean, I've not been happy for 2 generations is no turbo. But the hybrid that's coming, if it's anything like some of the more recent hybrids that we'll get to later, it's going to be more performance and better fuel. So you might get the best of both worlds. And it's one that, as we talk to Subaru, they're building from the ground up, it sounds like, or at least they're borrowing or buying from someone different. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see 1 more year.
Yeah, that will be potentially what can rocket it up to, right near the front of the class.
So we get to a car that one of us actually drove. I drove the BMW M440i xDrive Grand Coupe, which is a long name. So driving it, I was mostly impressed. It wasn't as disappointed. It was just, there's some things that are ho-hum, and I think it is us that are old remember 3 Series, which is just like a 3 Series twin, were these light raw cars. And I mean, those days are gone, like it is for everybody. So this is a 4,100-pound car, I think, and it drives like that. Like it's not that it's heavy, it just feels solid. It drives more like an older 5 Series than a 3. It has that nose, which, it's been beaten to death, so we don't have to go into that. But the rest of the car, I kind of talk about how good it is, because the 40 series of BMWs, 340i, 440i, even in the bigger cars like 545s now, or
X7.
yeah, like that Turbo 6 is just, it's a great engine. So I really compared it to the M340, and in my mind, I would rather this, because just little things like it has. Well, this is a little thing. The big thing is it has a lift back, and although the trunk is actually smaller in terms of volume, it's way more accessible, and he's full the seats down, and it's like there's no comparison. So you kind of get that, wagony crossover feel and capability. It has pillarless doors, which I just think are cool. It has a nicer shape because of it being a fastback. Now you lose an inch of rear seat headroom, which is like 36 something, which is small. But the 3 Series is only 37. So, I mean, you're kicking out a fraction of people there. And it's a $1,500 price increase in the US. And in Canada, it isn't, because this isn't actually sold in Canada. It's just this one special model will be, and just a couple hundred will be available. So, I mean, for $1,500, I think that's worth the liftback alone. I mean, a $1,500 upgrade feature in BMW isn't even like a heated seat. So if you get a whole different access to the trunk, like, sign me up.
Well, yeah, and I mean, $1,500, that's purchase price difference, but how many people are buying their BMWs instead of leasing them? Like, at the end of the day, no one's going to really notice that difference.
You're right. It's like $3 a month or something.
Yeah.
I get you still have to have 3 Series because it's iconic, but this is so well done, where some other coupe-ish 4-doors I've been in, and those too compromised, are kind of awkward. But I really liked it. It's so refined now, which I get. Like, that's what luxury cars are. I guess that's what the 2 Series is for, if you want something a little more raw.
Yeah, and I guess everyone has done that, right? At this point, like Mercedes has the CLA, Audi has the A3, S3, and now BMW has the 2 Series. Like, all of these cars have gotten so bigger that things had to slot in below them. And if you want that sort of feel, you can kind of get that. Not so much with the 2 Series, because the 2 Series really does feel like a very slightly smaller 3. But, that's,
like I said, smaller and not lighter.
Yeah.
All right, and our last review feature is another freelancer, Jeff Wilson, went on a Subaru track day. And this is his first article, where he got to drive the BRZ TS. So TS has historically meant tuned by STI. So this isn't an STI model, but STI takes it and does some tweaks. So his reviews is very accurate, very much exactly how I feel. So they gave it some massive Brembo brakes all around. I think it's six piston in the front and 2 in the rear. And they tweaked the suspension, and they used, you have to read his story, but there's basically, the damper is a 2-valve system, where when it's a normal mode, it allows more squish, but when a lot of force is on it, it uses a bypass valve, so it stiffens up. And you say, like, why don't more people use this? Because it works so well, and it's not all these electronics that can break and whatnot. And they did some other tuning, and then that was it. They left the wheels, they left the tires, they left the power. And he even makes a comment about people be like, oh, I want more turbos and power and this and that. But like, that's not this car. This car is about revving the crap out of it on a back straight or down your favorite twisty road, having a greatly balanced chassis that has tires that can break loose, so you can really like feel the power and the limits and just have fun. Like, it's a fun machine. It's not there to set records.
Yeah. And I mean, if you want more power, and like, my understanding of driving, every time I've driven a BRZ or a GR86, it's like, that's more about precision than power. If you want power, there's a WRX, which, not getting ahead of ourselves here, but people will hear about that from Jeff.
Yeah, that'll be next week. Yeah, no, you're right. And he even said in his article, you can aftermarket turbo and supercharge it. And that's the thing that drives me nuts. To be like, well, there's so many aftermarket turbos. Why doesn't Subaru do it? If you actually look at the engineering of the car from day one, which I was at the launch of it, and I know, the reason it has this crazy, awesome dynamics is Subaru dropped the engine and moved it back, to the point where they can never put their factory turbo on. Like, it's just not an option. So the people who are doing aftermarket aren't putting them in the spot it's supposed to be in. Let's not even get into reliability, emissions, and fuel economy. But like, it's not the Subaru's being stubborn or denying you something. Like, that's the point of this car. If you want that, like you said, the engine has to go up and forward, and might as well have all-wheel drive and I have a WRX. So
yeah.
Anyway, moving on to our news of the week. But before we do that, I had my favorite Genesis Coupe update yet. I am so excited about this. You'll probably see in the video. So we'll be right back. eBay Motors is here for the ride. With the parts you need at the prices you want, and with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, they're guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Welcome to another edition of Project Genesis Coupe. This week we are doing something that's pretty obvious to those watching video, but those listening, I'll let you in on it. It is wheels. Now, so far on the car, we've done some smaller items like the headlights and taillights and intake, but this here is going to be very obvious because it'll have 4 wheels at all 4 corners. Now, stock on my car came with 18-inch wheels that were 7.5 inches wide in the front and 8 inches wide in the rear. I've decided to upgrade to 19-inch wheels. Now, that was a size available on the Genesis on some higher trims, but these Koenig Heliogram or Heliogram, not really sure how to say it, are wider than the stock size. They are 8.5 inches in the front and 9.5 in the rear. The reason being is I want to get a wider tire to go on these wheels while still staying within the fenders and all the sort of legal issues you need to have. So first up, let's take a look at what I got, and then we will put them on the car. All right, let's take a look and see what we got. This is the 9.5, so this is a rear wheel. I really like the way Koenig packs these to keep them safe and not get damaged or scratched. So if I take the lid off, a nice cover, and oh yeah, look at those. These are great. I wanted a simple design, and I also wanted something on the darker bronze. I just really like that look. So yeah, this is pretty much what I was looking for. Looks great. Okay, so I've put a front and a rear wheel on the ground and put in their center caps so those watching the video can see sort of what direct sunlight looks on them. I like the matte finish. It's not overly shiny, but it still sparkles in the sun. Overall, this is pretty much exactly what I was looking for. Those listening can always go over to our AutoGuide YouTube channel and look for this podcast and see the wheels for yourself. Now there's just one thing left to do, and that's test them on the car. Okay, so they're mounted. The front seems to have no clearance issues. I'll do a little steering check in a bit just to make sure. Up by the suspension here, it's okay, but I was able to spin it, no problem, and nothing's rubbing, so that's good. And then if you go to the back, it too fits. It fits even better. There's definitely no space back here. It's just at the edge of the car's body, so once I get the tire enough to see about that, maybe I'll get myself some flares or something, but I'm happy with how they look right now and that they fit. So now all we have to do is get the tires on and see the completed look. Okay, it's a few days later and the wheels have been installed. Those watching the video can sort of see the final product. If you're listening, I'll try to describe it the best I can, but you can always come to our YouTube channel to see. So I really like the way that the bronze with the black lugs looks against this car, both front and rear. It's simple, but I just like the combination. We'll start at the rear here, and I was worried about how the tire would fit to the car, and you can see here, it's completely flush, and it will tuck in just a bit when the suspension goes up. When I get my coilovers, we'll take a second look at that. Moving up front, there's absolutely zero clearance issues. Can turn the wheel lock to lock completely, and everything's fine. The 19s just seem better suited for the overall size and shape of this car. I have noticed zero penalty in ride quality. It still seems to drive the exact same as it did before, which is nice. I was expecting it to get worse with bigger wheels and less sidewall. So to prove my point, the road I'm driving on right now is one of the worst around my house. It's quite punishing. In some sports cars I drive, it's downright unbearable. Here it's just like the car was, if not even better. So yeah, the larger wheels have not given me any sort of penalty. I know it's more the tires, but hey, I get the great looks of these Koenig wheels with no penalties. Win-win. All right, so as you see, I love those wheels and tires. I haven't got to drive it as much as I want because, poor us, I have to drive other people's cars and review them. But this week I hope to get some more time behind the wheel, and just the first couple drives, like it's, as I said, it's the weight and the width has made my steering so much heavier, but it's given me more feel and subconsciously more confidence. I mean, as I said in the video, Genesis steering is not great. The Genesis Coupe was never a strong point, but now it's like I can actually feel what the front tires are doing, which is nice. So more to go. So anyway, our first news story comes from our patent guru, who found that Lexus, I think it's in Japan, has trademarked a whole bunch of names around the ES, the ES 500E. I think it was the ES Electric, a whole ES 350E,
350H as well.
350H, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, a bigger, more powerful hybrid if you go by Lexus talk. So I'm thinking maybe it's going to get the 2.4 turbo, maybe. I don't know. It hasn't been in a front wheel drive configuration yet.
I think, yeah, like if I had to guess, because there's a lot of commonality between all their platforms. I'm guessing ES 350H would literally just be the NX or RX drivetrain thrown into a sedan, including all-wheel drive, because now Toyota and Lexus are offering all-wheel drive on every one of their sedans except the current ES. Oh well, it has all-wheel drive, but not as a hybrid.
Yeah, you have to get the 6-cylinder to get the and that engine's gone. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like the 2.4 turbo out of the NX. What's that? The 500H? Is that
the NX has the NX doesn't get
the RX.
Yeah, the hybrid, only the RX gets the 2.4
okay.
turbo.
Well, I mean, this is a giant platform, so it could get the RX. And the 500E is obviously, maybe they're adapting the RZ's whole drivetrain in there. I mean, I don't know because it wasn't built for that, but there's obviously something they're doing. Or it could just be, it is just going to get maybe the turbo hybrid, and they're just not sure what they want to call it yet.
I mean, you really enjoyed the Crown. Imagine the Crown powertrain in the ES. That sounds pretty fun. And a 500, an electric version of an ES also sounds excellent, because the ES is one of the few like non-sporty cars out on the road. So why not?
I didn't even think of the Crown connection. Yeah, no, that would make total sense, especially if they bring a new one out. They just build it on the Crown platform. I mean, why not? So.
Yeah, because it was paired with the Avalon before, and the Avalon's dead. So
yeah. All right, moving on. BMW decided the M4 wasn't good enough, so they brought out the M4 CS, which, no surprise, we have an M3 CS, so of course it was going to come. So, lighter, more raw, kind of addresses some of the things I was saying about the M440. I mean, if you want a full-out sports car, here it is, but open your wallet.
Yeah,
I'm cheap.
It is expensive, and I mean, it's more power. I drove the M4 CSL, a year and a half ago. That was wickedly fast, but I never thought driving the regular M4, like, oh darn, this thing's down on power. I guess it's creating more of a gap between it and the M440s, and so that's great. And Isle of Man green, but as a matte version, is a excellent color. It looks good. The cool taillights, like the upgrades are interesting. Yeah, but it's pricey.
Yeah, the M4, especially the performance pack, like it's a rocket already. But I don't mean this in a bad way, but this is, BMW knows they have a huge fan base. So this is for the person who wants the ultimate M4 BMW and is willing to pay anything just because, and they want to pay anything because they want it to be so exclusive that it's like, oh wow, you got one of those. If it was $30,000-$40,000 cheaper, more people buy it. So yeah, and it's going to go straight into a garage probably. Oh. And in other non-surprising news, Jeep has announced that they will be putting the 4xe system into the Gladiator, which makes total sense, especially since the diesel's gone, because that was sort of its torquey efficient version. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it because I like the 4xe and the Wrangler, but it's still one of those kind of, you're sacrificing off-road prowess for efficiency in a vehicle that's just designed to be an off-roader, basically. Like you're increasing weight, so in the pickup, it makes more sense because this thing already sacrifices off-road with its ridiculous body length and whatnot. So yeah, it's kind of a cool option. It'll add like a cool aspect to an already pretty funky truck.
I'm genuinely surprised it took this long, but I guess it's because the regular 4xe is the best-selling plug-in hybrid in America. So I imagine it's just been trying to match demand, which is delayed installing this in a Gladiator.
Yeah, I agree, and maybe it's even exceeding Jeep's expectations. They thought, well, why put it in this lower selling Rubicon or not Rubicon, Gladiator? But now they're like, you know what? Maybe this will boost Gladiator sales. So,
and it'll be the only plug-in mid-size truck. And there's only one other hybrid mid-size truck currently. So,
yeah. And in another vehicle that was already ridiculously fast, but Porsche decided need to be even faster, is the Cayman GT4S that Kyle, you drove a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Almost 2 years ago now, yeah.
But now they're getting at the Mante. Is that how you say it? Mante?
Menthe? Yeah, it's a racing team, right? Like it's a very successful racing team in Europe for decades at this point, and they have a habit of just taking the fastest Porsches and making them that much quicker.
Well, if you buy the kit for a low sum of just $54,000 for the kit, you get increased downforce, some cool wheels, and obviously better track per house, which is what this car is meant for, right? So let's hope the buyers are using it for that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope so. If you're buying any other Cayman, I can see how you're probably like maybe you're never taking it to a track, and that's okay. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit sad, but that's fine. But this, the RS, I mean, it just seemed pissed off when I drove it on the road that it wasn't on a track. So, yeah, I mean, if you have one, I'm sure it's appreciating no matter what. So throw this kit on there. You bought a GT4 RS, you have the money.
I mean, in fairness, if I had that kind of money that I could just throw an extra 50-something thousand on my car and get those rear wheels, it might be worth it because they're really cool.
They're cool as hell. Yeah.
Yeah. And our final quick story is a storied nameplate is dead once again. Malibu is done. I mean, for some people, they said, "Oh, it's sold for sale." I've actually heard that comment quite a bit. And in fairness, I get it. Chevy hasn't advertised it or pushed it in a while, but it's officially done.
Yeah, so this was a really weird one for me because I was on a trip, which I'll talk a little bit later about on the podcast, but I was in the airport shuttle with 2 other journalists, and we were talking about the Legacy dying, which was our news last week, 2 weeks ago. And we're talking about how I'm in an Altima this week, and we're like, well, what's even left? Someone mentioned the Malibu, and it was, is that even still in production? No, like they're killing it. They just haven't made it official yet. And we pulled up to the hotel and we saw this news. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, they've made it official. They're killing it.
Yeah, and as Chase said, it's because they want to ramp up Bolt, which makes sense. They're going for the vehicle that's selling, and that's
the vehicle that they killed. And now they're like, oh, whoops. Sorry,
we killed the wrong one.
We left this.
So yeah, so it's done, and like you said, I think there was, by my estimation, 6 midsize sedans at the start of last week, and now we're down to 4.
Yep.
So,
and I mean,
and 2 of them are basically the same.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we have 5 in the US, 4 in Canada.
What do they get that we don't?
K5.
Oh, that's counting the K5.
Oh.
So what's the Camry, Accord, Sonata, K5?
And Altima.
Oh, yeah, right.
The one I just, yeah.
One of our physically driving.
Well, but to that point, actually, do you remember the very short-lived GM car sharing program? I forget what it was even called.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a Malibu from that back in late 2019. And I think that's the only car that I forgot what I was driving as I was driving it. It doesn't stand out. And in a category that is already struggling, you need some sort of standout features. And it wasn't trying. So, you know what? Like, the Bolt was interesting. So if Chevy is going to be making a new one, I'm all on board that idea.
And the Malibu, I was on the launch when they launched the hybrid. It was the hybrid, and I think the 2.0T maybe. No, I don't think they had the big engine yet. I think it was maybe just a small turbo, 1.4, 1.5. And the hybrid was a good car, but it just never sold because their customer base just wasn't into it. And
yeah.
Anyway, we need to take a break, and we'll get a word from our sponsor. And when I guess I come back, I'll be talking to the CEO of Lamborghini North America about the Urus SE, He gives me a full walk around of the vehicle, answers some questions. There's actually some very interesting tidbits I picked up about it. So stick around and we'll be back in a bit. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Okay everyone, let's take a minute and talk about the one that got away. The vehicle you once owned and for whatever reason had to get rid of, and to this day fully regret ever doing so. For me, it's my Subaru SVX. It was a 1997 model, which was one of the last years it was ever sold here. It was black on the outside and it had the beige leather and suede interior. It was in amazing condition for its age because it was just a one-owner vehicle. The interior was near flawless. The paint was pretty good considering it was about a 20-year-old car when I got it. I just loved everything about it. I loved the quirkiness because I love oddball cars. I love the window within the window, the power button on the gear shifter, the way the dash was laid out and you could hide the radio behind the fake wood panel. The flat six was just so smooth and it was all-wheel drive, and although it wasn't overly quick, it still had enough power. The problem was, within a year of buying that car, I ended up selling it because I got a great deal on another vehicle. And to this day, I regret doing so. Part of the reason I sold it was, although it was in great shape, it wasn't perfect and there were things that needed to be fixed, like the air conditioner, reservoir, some bearings, and other bits. And back then there was no eBay guaranteed fit program, so finding parts for such a rare 20-year-old car was not easy. Luckily, I sold it to someone who not only cared for it, but took the time to fix it up, and every once in a while I do get to still see it, and I still regret ever getting rid of it. I am constantly online looking for a new SVX because now I have a system that I can find parts for it, but I haven't come across one that's both in the right condition and the right price range. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, we have a very special guest this week who is going to show us the latest vehicle. For our listeners, can you introduce yourself and what you do?
I'm Andrea Baldi. I'm the president and CEO of Lamborghini Americas, and I'm happy to have you here in Toronto for the national premiere in Canada of the Urus SE, the newest derivatives of Urus, and the latest car presented by Automobile Lamborghini globally just a few weeks ago in China.
Yeah, so we have one right here, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
You don't mind walking me around this beautiful SUV?
First of all, it's a car that's been redesigned in many details. Many are immediately recognizable for people that has had a Urus or that they are familiar with the shape of the Urus. You can see there is a complete different front of the car, designed with different angles and lines. The car is probably easier to appreciate if you start from this angle and you see how the front is changing with these flaps, and then you can immediately spot the new design for the headlamps. But apart from the new design, that here is really emphasized by this beautiful new color.
Yeah, it's a great color.
Yes, beautiful with all the sparkle.
Yeah.
It's called Arancho Egon, and it's new to the brand. Again, apart from that, and all these beautiful new rims that are also 23 inches and define the car and gives him a different character. The real secret of the car is inside. So this is going to be a very important piece in our strategy for reducing emissions and therefore electrifying our products. This is an hybrid, the first hybrid for an SUV, the second of Lamborghini after the Revuelto to the V12 that we have presented and introduced to market last year. This is a car that, thanks to the electrification, will not only reduce the emission by 80%, but will increase performance, because you have actually combined the internal combustion engine that is still a twin turbo V8 engine with an electric engine that is delivering an additional 192 CV and therefore the overall maximum power of this car is 800 CV, and it's way more than what we had before with the Urus S, that is the predecessor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's impressive. I read that although this is heavier, it will outperform the S, which is quite a mechanical feat.
Well, yes, in a super sport car, what really matters is always the weight to power ratio. Sure, adding the battery and the electric engine implies that you increase the weight, but because you increase the power, and if you improve the weight to power ratio, you have a car that is faster, and it is in the 0-100 or the 0-200, but also in the top speed. Now reaching 3,010 kilometers per hour, in case you are in a racetrack.
Yeah, on a racetrack.
Of course.
Yes.
So the part that I like the most of the car, it's going to be the drivability. Unfortunately, I cannot really show it to you today, but it's not just performance pure in terms of speed or efficiency in terms of reducing emission. It's about the way the car will behave. Because when you have the opportunity to work on a car that was already extremely funny to drive, you want to do better. And the opportunity came from adding an electric engine that obviously is more tunable and offers more opportunity in terms of the way you want to deliver the torque. Combining, of course, with an internal combustion engine, we have integrated the electric engine into the gearbox, the 8 gears gearbox. And we have added an hang-on in between the two axles that delivers torque vectoring opportunity. We can tune the torque that is delivered in the front and then the rear axle. On top of this, there is a differential on the rear that also helps to deliver a lateral torque vectoring. And when you get into the tuning of all these systems, you can really get the experience of driving the car funnier and more extreme. You can even push it into some oversteering if you want, preserve, but even expand the character, the sporty character of this car that was already clearly a Lamborghini, but this is even better. So the nicest, the fastest, but also the funnier to drive.
It's great you talk about that, because there's actually leads me into a couple quick questions. Just first about how you say it could oversteer. I assume there's different drive modes that let you do different.
We have 6 different driving modes that are available depending on the surface you are or how performant you want to be. There is also another lever into the tamburo, that is the device inside the car where you change the 6 driving modes. That has itself another few possibilities, include also driving fully electric. We call that way Città. Città stands for city, and it's also on a button that you have on the steering wheel, because you may want to switch into electric when you don't want to be noisy, or you don't want to wake up your neighbor, whatever is the reason, or you are in the center of the Berlin. I think it's the only city in the world where you cannot have an internal combustion engine on for whatever reason.
And it goes about 130 kilometers?
Up to 130 kilometers per hour, then it will automatically turn on the internal combustion engine because to go faster. It's a plug-in hybrid, but you barely gonna have any chance in your life to charge it because again, the internal combustion engine will intervene to charge the battery if you need to do so, or you can even select one of the driving mode to make sure that the charger is faster and more efficient. But in that case, of course, you lose some power, so you need to decide on purpose if you want to charge it. But the plug-in door is there eventually in case you want to charge it. But again, I don't think anybody ever will have to.
So on the highway, you could just recharge while you're just cruising down the road.
The internal combustion engine will do the charge. And We have a different interior in certain details, especially most important is a bigger HMI.
Okay.
We felt there was the possibility to make it a little bigger, and we like that it's very slick and long, and you have 3 screens, and makes the experience inside also luxurious and absolutely aligned to what our customer need. This is a everyday car. Mm-hmm. It's not like a 2-seater where you would expect and use more for special occasions or in the weekend. This is a car that you use every day, and you want the highest comfort when comfort is needed, versatility when is needed, power and performance if you want to go to a racetrack, or if you want to go very fast, then this is a car that lets you forget that there are 5 seats and you feel like you are in a 2-seaters. And that's the secret of Urus, I think, is above all this. The secret it's that you have a car in a particular segment where Urus is kind of alone in terms of performance, drivability, exclusivity, and make us very proud, but also happy, because obviously help us to make sure that there is always more demand than supply on Urus.
Yeah. So Lamborghinis are incredibly fast. They always have been. But it's more than that, the experience, the sound, the look, the feel. As you get deeper into plug-in hybrid and electric, is it going to be hard to tackle some of those issues, or will it just sort of transition naturally?
I think the best example is the transition from pure internal combustion engine to hybridization, like it is happening now. There was some skepticism from our customers. Not that they are not concerned about sustainability, but they are also concerned about the passion they have for internal combustion engines, and therefore some of them was waiting to understand what was going to be really the outcome of our application of electrification to Lamborghini. How did we plan to maintain the DNA of the car and the brand in a car that was becoming electric? And the evidence is here, now that you get a faster car that is more performant, is efficient, which is at the end of the day also a concern, but is a super sport car. Noise is there, engine is there, it's just extremely more efficient and faster, and also has possibility that the previous car couldn't have. So hybridization is an answer that, like, if you look at motorsport, has become evident to everybody, is not affecting super sport cars, but is actually improving the experience in every sense. And I don't have to mention necessarily the most famous racing formula that exists in this world, but I can go simply on the endurance. Hybrid cars, since their introduction, have led so many car manufacturers to get back or get in for the first time, like in our case, into that formula, the WEC or the IMSA, for a simple reason that it's very attractive for people that is passionate about sport cars.
Okay, just one last question then. So when you designed the hybrid system for this vehicle, it sounds like you were taking sort of the racing application mentality of it could be for efficiency, but it could also be for performance. Was that like important to try to get both into the vehicle?
Absolutely. If you tell me what was the priority of Lamborghini when I was a child, probably was the performance only. Today, definitely performance and efficiency are weighted with the same relevance, because they exactly multiply each other, and therefore they are not one in one direction, one in the other. They can be aligned in the same direction. So it works very well for us and motorsport in general.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you've had great success with this vehicle. I'm sure it's going to expand. Do you know sort of what you think the take rate will be for the SE over the S and the?
So the S, we will stop production. We will discontinue production this year. So next year we will produce only SE, and same for Performante. S and Performante are going to be discontinued this year.
Okay.
And we are going to have only the SE available customer next
So it's be 100% then.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for taking time to show us this beautiful vehicle. And
It was a pleasure.
yeah, and hope we talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, it's once again time for our Formula One news and rumors. We have Colin Wood joining us again.
Hey.
And I think before we get started, I have to say we were off by one race. Lando did get his first win, just one race off. We were just a little too far in our prediction.
I was just going to say that, actually. That's exactly what I was thinking. We called Lando, and I was, before the previous podcast, I was going to say something right when we were ending, that it's like, maybe Lando win this one, and boom, you just felt it was coming, right?
Yeah, like you knew he had the talent in the car. He's one of, if not my favorite driver there, and seeing his win, you can see how popular it is, like with everybody. Like all the drivers were so happy to see a win. Like he seems like just a genuinely nice guy that everyone likes. So good for him. It's good to see him get it. Like Max was, I think, almost as happy as Lando was that he won it.
I know. He was very pleased, and they're good buddies, right? So
yeah, exactly.
And I don't know if that's I don't know if that's Max being big, right, and not wallowing in depression because he only came second. Normally there are I think when you're that far ahead in the championship, it's easy to be gracious, right? Like back when it was, Lewis versus Max and they were head to head and it was deciding he wasn't so polite. So
yeah. Well, like the Sainz win was his car broke, and this is a one-off. But I also wonder if it's because Lando, him and his car outdrove him in the last section. So, maybe he was like, okay, like good on you, you did it, as opposed to he's mad or frustrated that his car broke or something screwed up on him.
Yeah, well, so I read maybe it's a conspiracy theory that I guess when Max drove over that the pylon, the bollard, as the Brits like to say, that it damaged the underside of his car and that slowed him down, which does make some sense. But even if that's true, Max made the error, right? Like he made the error to hit that and make that mistake. And this takes me back to back in the Renault Ferrari days, Flavio Briatore, who I know has a lot of controversy behind it, but he said something once way back then about how, we don't have to win the race. We just have to make Ferrari think they're going to lose. Like they could lose. And then you've planted that seed of doubt and it's all, like it starts to unravel. So you've got to chip away. Like you don't have to be the best car right away. You have to chip away at their mental state and make sure, make them think I could lose this. And then they start thinking about losing, and that's your first step to victory. So
yeah, like you said, even if there was some damage, it wasn't catastrophic or anything. So Max said, like, he hopes that's not their pace, because when's the last time someone just flat out beat him on the track where, his car didn't break or some weird weather caught him out or whatnot? Like, it's been a while. It's
been a very long time. So good for Lando, and I think we'll see more of him on the podium. I saw a funny stat that despite we think that he's like, it's been forever since he's been racing without a race. Apparently the still leader of most races until they got their first victory is Sergio Perez at I want to say 180 races, and Lando's at 110 races before he won a race. So good for him.
And there's a lot of guys who have way more races that never won anything ever in their career.
Yeah. Well, think about Nico, right? Nico Hülkenberg still. Yeah. He doesn't even have a podium. So,
I mean, I think Magnussen's got to be getting up there by now.
I think he is. He's it's been a long time. And Magnussen's so bad too, because he wasn't on the podium on his first race. It was something absurd. He was hot right out of the start and just never transpired in anything. So we'll see. So I have some other while we're talking about McLaren, this is some shameless plugging here that they didn't pay me to say, but I will anyway because I thought it was interesting. Just last week, McLaren announced a new sponsor, and that sponsor is eBay. And of course, eBay sponsors this podcast. So I guess we have to cheer for Lando now. I don't know. So
are they going to dial down on the Google Chrome on the car and throw some eBay on there?
There apparently was some branding on it, and maybe we'll see more in the future. But it sounds like it's a multi-year deal. So there's a lot of jokes that McLaren will sell anything, right? They'll put no nothing against any sponsors. They're all first rate, right? But they just McLaren was really big early on all the sponsors, and now it looks like maybe they're putting all that money to good use and turning it into wins. So
And they're still called McLaren. They're not called MoneyGram McLaren or anything else. But they're not selling to anybody. But I mean,
No.
good on eBay, because it looks like you're catching McLaren sort of on the rise. I mean, 2 years, everything changes, but it seems like they're figuring out this car, and maybe they'll be ready for the next car. So we'll see.
Yeah, you know, sometimes sometimes you put your money in front of a bad horse at like the wrong time, but now that seems, like you said, like the right time, right? Get behind the winners at the early days. So
yeah, like all the celebrities are like, Alpine, yeah, we'll throw money at you.
yeah, I know. I think about that. That's not working out for them so well.
Oh well. So anything else?
Yes, I have to keep you abreast of the latest Liberty Media, Andretti Cadillac news, all that stuff. So it was I want to say last week or the week before, we talked about how there was that letter the 12 members of Congress sent to Liberty Media, basically asking about why they weren't included in why Andretti isn't in Formula One, and it seemed like, okay, where's it go from there, right? So the House Judiciary Committee, so the chairman is Jim Jordan, he officially opened a probe into Liberty Media's decision and sent a letter to the CEO of Liberty Media as well as to the CEO of Formula One. And I want to read you a little excerpt from it. The language is interesting. He said, the excuses put forward for denying Andretti Cadillac's entry appear to be pretextual, arbitrary, and unrelated to Andretti Cadillac's suitability to compete in Formula One. And then maybe I'll go on here. This is also good. This is weak teams want to be protected from competition to the detriment of consumers, and an additional team would compete for prize money and sponsorships. If Formula One must hinder competition and harm consumers to protect failing competitors, then the entire Formula One model may be broken, and the entity cannot hide behind the necessity of a sports league to pursue anti-competitive conduct. Delaying Andretti Cadillac's entry into Formula One for even 1 year will harm American consumers to benefit failing Formula One teams. So it's a pretty juicy letter. So
yeah, like I don't think it's going to get them in next year, or maybe even 26. But what it's going to do is it's going to be next time they officially submit, like they're trying to get Formula One to the point where they can't say no, because it'd just be a nightmare. But it's like the Andretti racing team, like corporation, is probably up there with Haas, and they have one of the biggest automakers in the world backing them, which Haas doesn't have. So like, how can you say they wouldn't be competitive? But
I know. Well, and that was actually, there's more in that letter. It would actually goes on to basically say that the wording of the letter, that the wording of whatever it is, Liberty Media's statement was basically they can't have it both ways. There's a bit where they go on to say that basically about the engine supplier of Cadillac, that it's either both, too, it would be detrimental to the brand to just reuse an engine that exists already, and that's not good for the Formula One. But then at the same time, it's not a good. So it's on that side not a good look, and it sort of cheapens Formula One. But on the other side, then they talk about how it would be potentially like uncompetitive because it would be too good, something along those lines. And it's like you can't say both of those things at the same time. So the letter calls them out pretty hard. So.
Yeah, and like you're right, they can't put a Ferrari or Mercedes. I mean, Aston Martin kind of gets away with it because they kind of do use Mercedes engines in some of their cars. So, yeah, well, like I said, they won't be there in 25. I mean, it's too late now. You need to be developing your car already. But maybe they squeeze themselves in for 26. But I think they said 28 was the next opening. They'll be there. There's no doubt.
Agreed.
I still think they might fast track and just buy a team. Like there may be teams at the end of this year, like, you know what, we don't want to put the investment to develop the new car for 26 and we're done. So
it could happen, but buy a Williams, buy whatever, maybe they find a solution. But yeah, it's going to be you certainly feel like it's going to be super awkward when they show up on the grid, right? Walk around saying hi to all the other guys. But I guess, it's sort of it's a bit of the bold and brash attitude, right? Just like, yeah, we're going to get in any way possible, and you're not going to shut us out. So good for them. I mean, I wouldn't normally go the political route or, condone governments getting involved, but I think, it shows they are unbelievably determined to make this happen, right? So good on them.
Williams Andretti Cadillac has a nice ring to it too.
It does. I agree. We can make that happen, and maybe they'll hire Adrian Newey.
I like them saying they would be competitive, almost like Cadillac isn't into motorsports. Like, they've been doing the Daytona DPIs for a long time and had good success there. And now they're into the hypercars or whatever you call them at Le Mans. Like they have a history and they have the funds. So anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. A final quick note that was interesting. I saw that the Miami GP actually had the highest F1 TV audience viewership in the States of all time. 3.1 million people tuned in. So I've heard rumors recently about sort of this decline in interest. Maybe that's not so true. So
yeah, they're selling $180 nachos somehow. So
yeah,
that's some interest.
That's what we should have really talked about this whole time. Really, what someone needs to go is we need to go and actually eat them, and like do a YouTube review of how good are these nachos. Each piece of cilantro is worth $6 or something. So
you know how you like drop a nacho at like a baseball game. You're like, oh well, like there you drop a nacho. That's probably like $10 you just dropped.
Yeah, it's like money on the ground. You're like, oh, there's a 20. Pick it up.
All right. Well, I know we had other stuff, but we better get going. So hopefully we'll have some more great stories for next week. And until then, we'll talk to you later.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
Well, sorry that took a bit longer because Colin and I couldn't stop talking F1 and the Andretti fiasco and how proud of Lando we were. So let's look ahead at what's next. As you've mentioned once or twice, we are driving sedans in a comparison, Honda Accord Hybrid against Altima all-wheel drive, which may sound not at all suited, but the goal is they're both mid-trim models around the same price, and it's two different takes. Naturally aspirated all-wheel drive for the better poor weather condition, or hybrid for a little more instant torque and fuel efficiency. So we don't want to spoil it. You'll have to wait for that review to come. Kyle, where were you this week?
This week, I was in Fort Worth, Texas, to drive the 2025 Genesis GV80. Not the Coupe. I may have said that I'd be driving both body styles on the call last week. That was yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone. That was a misunderstanding. That will be later on in the year, which I thought was going to be the case anyway. I knew it was going to be a staggered rollout. The surprising bit was that we literally only drove one trim. The top trim, the GV80 Prestige, which
that's what I'll be driving in the rally this summer.
There we go. And it's, I mean, I can't spoil anything because you'll have to read the review next week. But it's a very thoughtful facelift. It just upgrades some things because that vehicle's been on sale for almost 4 years now, and it's funny to think that it was Genesis' very first SUV. So now it's just got a couple really choice upgrades. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about it more soon. The one funny thing I will say is for the top trim, we were driving US spec models because of course we were, and that is a strictly 2-row affair in the US, but in Canada, it is only 3-row. So that is an important distinction. It's fascinating hearing about how the two countries, while similar, get their trims and their specs and their layouts, everything very different. So I'll talk about that a little bit more next week when you can read my whole review.
Yeah, so next week I will be in town. We will be starting more video content on our channel, so look for that. I am driving a very swanky Range Rover. More on that next week. I'm looking forward to that, just to, pretend I'm up in that price bracket.
Yeah. And similarly, I'm going to be driving, the highest version of another car, but a very different car. I will be driving the Mustang Dark Horse, which I'm very much looking forward to because I want to know exactly what separates it from the GT because it's quite a lot more money and it's the same basic engine, just tuned up a little bit. And so I want to know really what makes it tick. I've been seeing some other colleagues who have already been in it, and it has very extreme tires. So that's going to be an interesting week. But before I drive that, yeah, I hope it doesn't rain. But before I drive that, I will be going back out on another trip because Lincoln decided to save the best for last. So the new Nautilus, it's a whole new model for this year. It was already driven in the US fairly recently. We're going to be driving it for the Canadian event, but we're going to be going out to the beautiful East Coast of Canada and driving through 3 different provinces. So yeah, I expect to be able to share lots of very pretty photos, and I'm looking forward to it because I've never driven a Nautilus at all.
Blue Oval week for Kyle.
Yeah, both extremes.
I don't know why, but whenever I hear Dark Horse, I always read it and say it in my mind with a Boston accent. I just feel like it should be the Mustang Dark Horse.
Like Smart You can Smart
Yeah.
your Dark Horse. Yeah.
I don't know why. It's Dark Horse just doesn't sound cool enough. It needs to have some sort of flair to it.
I mean, it's a badass name.
Well, yeah, they've learned from the Mopar boys. Give your cars crazy names and people will buy them.
Yeah.
GM still likes to use their letters and numbers, which I get. They have a historic meaning, but
yeah,
it should have been like the Camaro Tire Destroyer or something. People are like, oh yeah, I want to buy that one.
Bring back like Firehawk. I guess you can't really use that for.
Well, good. They own it. I mean, it's sure it was a Pontiac, but
yeah. But yeah, so it should be a really fun week. We're covering a whole lot of ground next week.
Yeah. So anyway, this has gone long as always. We might have been under an hour this week, but I doubt it. We talked too much. So next week we will be back with more special guests and a lot more about Kyle's trip, our reviews, and whatever else gets published next week.
And upgrades to Genesis Coupe.
Oh yeah, next week's another good one. Well, it's the second half. You just saw me put the wheels on, so guess what next week is? The tires. But the tires are awesome. So yeah, I'm very happy. I was recommended these, and in my 5 miles of driving, I was very happy. So, all right. So that's it for the Auto Guide show, brought to you by eBay Motors. We will see you next week, hopefully.
So long.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.